Okay, hi, it's me, Simone Rankin Reed, here to help you with spiritual awakening and ascension. Today, I have a guest, Jerome Braggs, the Soul Medicine Man. He is a YouTuber and a modern day medicine man. Would you like to say anything
No, thank you
about
for
yourself?
having me, Simone.
Tell
Yes,
us a
my
little bit
name.
about yourself and what you do.
Yeah, so my name is Jerome Braggs. I'm affectionately known as the Soul Medicine Man, and what I do is I help people, particularly spiritual seekers. I teach them how to heal their bodies, create more flourishing and delicious lives, as well as fulfill their life purpose and their soul mission through the soul medicines, which are self love and alignment.
Mm-hmm.
And so I am an intuitive channel, a healer, and a spiritual teacher. Those are kind of my skill sets and my gifts. But that is what I do in the world, pretty much.
So you said that so much better than, however, I would have tried to plan to say it. Okay, so all right, so today I have Jerome with me today to help me with some things. I found him on YouTube um, through G-Man interviews. He interviewed him as well, and so on my journey, I'm trying to develop. I'm awakening my psychic abilities, and I'm trying to develop them further. And so I've done a lot of videos about spirit communication because that was the one thing that I awakened to. Like when I first opened up to this way, I was like on the beach one day in San Diego, and I was just meditating and enjoying the beauty, and I just heard a voice say, "You have to abandon all your beliefs." And as I told you, I grew up in this religious church. It was like a cult, and it was very controlled. And I was in a narcissistic relationship, and all of my beliefs were so screwed up that I couldn't believe. I was so stuck into the religious belief. I couldn't believe the things that they gave me an exorcism because I was having dreams, and so opening up to these things when that voice told me I didn't realize that was a voice speaking to me that wasn't myself. I thought it was my imagination. So along my journey, like slowly I'm noticing a lot of things, but what should I do? I guess what are the steps I should take if I would really want to go forward to having um, a more sensitive, I guess, communication with the energies or I guess spirit, any I don't know how to say it, but just awakening abilities like per se spirit communication or clairvoyance, clairaudience, clairsentience. Is that how you pronounce it?
Hmm.
Yeah. So basically, I guess if you can help me with developing my intuitive abilities further.
Yeah, so let me first tell you a little bit about my abilities. So that will kind of be a reference point for this conversation.
Sounds
So
good.
as an intuitive channel, my intuitive abilities, which also are psychic abilities, are I have the abilities of clairvoyance, clairsentience, claircognizance, and clairaudience. Now, the strongest abilities of those for me are clairsentience and claircognizance, which means I get a knowing of things without having any prior education or experience with them, especially so if I'm working with an individual, I will know things about them specifically for their life path, or if I'm working with their body, especially things about their body or the status of their health, without any previous, introduction
You
to the
said that was Claire.
person.
What again?
Clair cognizance.
Cognizance.
That's
Okay, a
just
knowing.
knowing.
Okay.
Like you'll have a knowing. The other one is clairsentience. Like there will be a feeling that I will get. Sometimes I can resonate with the feeling that somebody else is feeling, like the vibration that they're feeling,
Mm-hmm.
or emotional feeling, or something like that.
Uh-huh.
And then clairvoyance is that you may get visions, usually in your what people will say your third eye, which is your spiritual eye,
Yeah.
which is usually into your mental sight, right? In your mind, you may get some type of clear picture of something that is either happening now, or has happened, or
Mm-hmm.
will or may happen in the future.
Mm-hmm.
So those are kind of, and I also have the gifts of mediumship, which is communicating with um, the spiritual realm, communicating with, and whether that's, some mediums, all mediums don't have the same kind of, their gift doesn't show out the same. So mediumship basically means that that you have the ability to communicate with the other realm, which is the spiritual realm. We're in the physical realm. There's another realm which is not really, cannot really necessarily be touched or seen, but it could be felt. And if you have the gifts of clairaudience, you can hear it. Yeah. And you may communicate with, loved ones who have passed on, people who have lived in this life experience on this planet who have passed on. You may speak to, angels or guides who have not been physical. Or you may connect in with higher consciousness, which is what channeling is, which is what I do, where a higher level consciousness that is non-physical, meaning it's not it's not on the earth plane. It will speak through you. So you operate almost as like a message board where it kind of relays messages to other people through you for people's, for the expansion and growth of their lives. So those are kind of my gifts that I have, and why I call myself an intuitive channel. So the intuitive part is I have those gifts of clairaudience, claircognizance, clairsentience, and clairvoyance. And the channeling part is I am a channel. The consciousness that I work with is called the Beloved.
Yeah,
kind of like Abraham
Hicks. Video on the Beloved, so I know about that story.
So the consciousness that I work with is called the Beloved. Just like if you're familiar with Abraham Hicks, you know that Esther Hicks is the human being, and then Abraham is the consciousness that speaks through her. It's the same kind of way. So when we're talking about to get to your question, like when we're talking about developing our intuitive or our psychic gifts, the first thing to understand is that every single person is psychic. Every single person is intuitive. Every single one of us, whether we know it or not, whether we're operating in it or not, or whether we have a connection to it or not, every single one of us is. We all have those abilities and those skills because that's who we are. We're spiritual beings having a human experience. And so those gifts are literally just different ways of relating to and connecting to the higher portion of ourselves. So just like you would have, just like we all have bodies, right? Every single one of us has, if you're watching this, especially if you're watching this because you have eyes, which means you have a body. So if you're watching this, you're a human being, and which means you have a body. And so with bodies, a part of every human body is muscles, right? Muscles are a part of every human body. Now, there are some of us who are more muscular than others. Now, that may either be because they naturally have a genetic makeup in their body where their body is more muscular, or because they've worked it out. They've exercised it in a way to where their body is more muscular. But no matter who you are, whether you have the really muscular, ripped physique or not, your body has muscles that just may not be as developed.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense.
With these intuitive gifts, every single one of us has them, but yours may not be necessarily as developed, either because there are some of us who came in already connected to them and they're with them more developed, just like there are those of us who came in with a genetic makeup to be more muscular. And then there are those of us who have practiced it, who have worked on them, who have strengthened them through different exercises and different processes, etc., to where they're very strong, like myself. So everybody has them. And so the question isn't either, am I psychic or am I intuitive or not? And the question isn't also that if somebody else is psychic or intuitive or they're operating inside of those gifts, that person is not more special than you. They're not, more worthy or more, evolved of a being or anything like that. It just means that either they came into this lifetime of theirs more connected, or they did some work, or they had some type of event that helped them strengthen those aspects that are already within all of us. So if you're at a point where you're wanting to experience or enhance or have a deeper experience with your intuitive gifts, then that's about strengthening them. That's about strengthening your connection to them, because they're really usually, again, they're already there. They're muscles. They can be strong. You just have to strengthen your connection to them. And the first thing to do with that, what I will tell people is one of the most the first steps that I'll recommend, which is usually one of the most effective, is you've got to get more gaps in your thinking. The spiritual world speaks to us more in the gaps. So what I mean by that is, the majority of us, if you're a human being, I don't care where you live, what your culture is, what your gender is, what your sexual expression is, I don't care any of that. If you're a human being, your mind is used to racing 50,000 miles a minute, right? There's a lot of different stimuli going on in our mind. There's a lot of different, conversations we have in our head, thoughts we have running, belief systems that were put in. All of that stuff is in our heads. The spiritual world and your spiritual gifts begin to strengthen the more you have a relationship with putting space in between the thoughts. So most of us are used to having a thought after 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 a thought, right? They just come. I think about this, I think about that, I think about that. Oh my God, did I turn the car off? Oh my God, how's my dog going to be? Is she hungry? Do I need to feed her? All this, do I look fat in this? Like all of these different types of stuff, right? And so the first step when you're wanting to connect, because what you're really wanting to do is you're wanting to connect in more with yourself, because that's what you're really asking when you say, I want to develop my intuitive gifts. I want to be more in connection with the true me and all of the things that make up me. So things like meditation, help you begin to put gaps in your thoughts, right? So that, when you close your eyes and you just close your eyes. So for one, when you close your eyes, you're taking yourself out of a lot of the external stimuli that your eyes have, so your brain doesn't have to run, during that time as much. So when your eyes are open, you're processing the color of the chair, you're processing the couch, you're processing, what color I have on, and and all of that. When we close our eyes, that takes us away from having to process all of that, and our mind doesn't have to work so hard. And when you focus on just your breath, just breathing, I don't think meditation has to be so complex. Like, I don't think you have to bring in
that either.
the light from, into your different chakra. I'm not saying they're not beneficial. Those meditations are beneficial, but you don't have to do that to really do this. So you just want to close your eyes and just breathe and focus on your breathing and try not to think as much, right? That will start to get gaps in your thoughts. Another way to get...
Wait a second, you're frozen for a minute. I'm not sure why it's frozen.
Let's see, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Let's see. I don't know how to unfreeze it. Should I recall you?
Sometimes Skype will do this. If you can hear me, I say let's continue.
Okay.
Because you don't want to have to kind of lose what we were saying to try to reconnect. And then it'll probably just, the video will try to redo itself. Okay. Or unfreeze itself. But as long as they can hear me, this will work out for them.
Yeah, we can still hear.
So another thing you do is you want to take walks in nature. Nature actually will calm your mind down a little bit. You could going by a walk in nature. If you can walk in a park by yourself, or by a lake, or by a river, do that about 3 to 4 times a week if you can. Every day would be great if you can. But you want to get gaps in your thoughts, because the more gaps you put in your thoughts, the more you start to align with the non-physical, the spiritual aspect of you. And the more you'll start to feel and connect in with yourself, and you'll find your gifts will open. Usually almost any kind of teacher that teaches psychic development or intuitive development or anything like that, they're going to ask you to really start a meditation practice, because that's really what that's about. Now, you don't necessarily have to meditate. You just have to get something that is putting gaps in your thoughts. Another thing I highly recommend is to have a detox day once a week, where you unplug you unplug from social media, so you don't do any of the social media stuff. You don't watch television. If you can, you don't use your telephone, like you don't make calls or you don't pick up calls. And you really just do, that's when you go for a walk or you do some meditation or you read a nice book. You really want to take yourself away from all the external stimuli that we get so much of. Especially the external voices, because that's going to keep you away from being able to really tune into yourself and your inner gifts when you're so connected to and so inundated and so influenced by the external world. So you want to have a detox day where you really just pull back and tune in to what your inner voice is saying, because your inner those intuitive gifts, they strengthen the more you begin to hear and the more you begin to trust your inner voice, the voice of your soul. If you don't have a strong connection with that, and you don't trust that, or you don't have a way in which you can really hear that wisdom on a consistent basis, you're going to find it really hard to strengthen your intuitive gifts. You're going to find it really, really difficult, because that's the basis of them. Your intuitive gifts, no matter what they are, whether you're going to be a medium, whether you're just going to, whether it's going to be psychic abilities, whether, especially if you're going to open up to channeling, it's really vitally important that you have a very deep connection with being able to recognize what your inner voice is, being able to hear it and trust it and follow it. And that only gets strong, and you only get that the more you begin to pull away, what I call pull away from culture and society. The more you begin to pull, you have moments where you're not being bombarded by what's going on in social media, while you're not being bombarded by television, while you're not being bombarded by, the people in your life, like what the people at work are saying, what your friends are saying, what your parents are saying, what your family is saying, and you can get in tune with what your soul is saying. That's a very big piece. I see a lot of us go to it. We'll take the psychic classes, or we'll take the intuitive classes, we'll read the books, we'll do the exercises, but we forget this piece. And that's often when I see when it doesn't really work for people the way they want. They don't really strengthen it. They don't really have a strong sense of their gifts. Their gifts don't really express in a higher expression when they haven't really spent the time to really connect in with their inner voice.
Okay. Give me 1 second. I have to switch the connection. It's saying this one's running slow, but it shouldn't take us offline though. Can you still hear me? Hello? Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
I can.
Okay, good. Yeah. There we go. Okay, so yeah, that's good information. So, I resonate with that, with the cutting off. I understand that when I cut off with technology, that makes a big difference. I remember last year when I first had my awakening around, actually it was around this time last year, I had decided to take the month of February and I fasted from Facebook and social media, and I cut it off for 30 days. And I wanted to do it beforehand, but I kept trying to talk. I said, no, I don't know why I was guided to do it, but I felt like I wanted to figure out what I was doing after this awakening. Like, this was right before I started my YouTube channel. I wanted direction and guidance, and I felt like I was given so much energy to checking messages and commenting on photos that I just snapped it shut. And then I even did like a 7-day vegan fast, like a 7-day vegan challenge, and I ended up turning into a vegan after that. But soon as I was done with that month of fasting for Facebook, I started my YouTube channel, and everything, like my psychic abilities, I really started to develop them and notice them at that point. So I completely see where we have to disconnect from the physical realm in order to get more in touch with our spiritual side.
Yeah, we're just consistently bombarded in our culture and our society today by so much Well, I'll say noise. Now, I'm not going to say it's negative, that noise is negative. It's just noise. It's just constantly something going on. And if there's something you have to hear out here all the time, or in here, like it's stuff going on here, you can't get here.
Yeah.
You can't get here, which is where the God self lives, right? Which is where your most divine, most eternal wisdom, where your greatest guidance is, and the part of you that knows everything, the solution to every challenge or problem you're having. It knows the answer to everything that you're asking. Mm-hmm. It knows who you really are. It's like everything is internal, and you've got to be able to tune yourself to hear that. And when I say hear, sometimes it's audible, but most of the times it's a feeling. Mm-hmm. Like the things that come in are usually a feeling. You'll feel the guidance, you'll feel the wisdom, you'll feel the vision. And you can't get there if your mind has to be preoccupied with processing what your girlfriend or your boyfriend is saying, or what your kids are wanting right now, or what your boss is doing, or your old thoughts about, how fat you are, or all of that. You can't get there if your mind is so preoccupied and so busy expending its energy processing all of that. You've got to give your mind a rest so that it can process and hear in what your soul is saying.
Okay, so I have a question. Okay, so now when we talk about clairaudience, now this is a two-part question. Are you talking about hearing a physical, audible voice, or hearing it in your mind, like a conversation in your mind? And the second part of that question is, how do you know when you hear something? Like I'll like say I'll be driving and it'll say something like, I remember I had this situation going on with my ex-boyfriend, and I heard a voice saying, "Don't leave him now." And I'm like, so how do you determine where this voice is coming from? How do you determine, is it my imagination? Is it my higher self? Is it something else? Like how do you start to learn how to trust this voice and learn? Because I understand now, like a lot of different times it might be directly your higher self, but it could be something else. And like, how do you start to, I guess, get a hold on the voices in your head?
Yeah. So the first part of that is with clairaudience. For some people that with their clairaudient gift, they do hear it does sound like an external voice, right? For some people. For other people, and like for me specifically, it's a telepathic voice. Mm-hmm. So I hear it in my mind. And almost as if you've heard a lot of people who will say, who've had near-death experiences and they meet a loved one on the other side, and they'll say they were talking to the loved one, but the loved one there were no words, but it was like they could just immediately they would hear it in the head. Yeah. It's kind of like that. And so all of us, by the way, communicate more telepathically than we do audibly. Yeah. We're just not aware that that's actually happening. All of us do, again, because these are all of our gifts. This is part of all of our being. Mm-hmm. But we're just not, we haven't been trained to recognize what it is, to understand what it is. Like, for example, a way we speak with clairaudience, and we speak telepathically, is, let's say you think of somebody, mm-hmm. and all of a sudden that person calls you. Yeah, you sent a telepathic message to that person, mm-hmm. that says, "Hey, I'm thinking about you," mm-hmm. and that person will receive it in a way that they don't know. Oh, I'm Simone is calling me telepathically. They just think, oh, I'm thinking about this person. I want to give them a call. Mm-hmm. That's telepathic communication. Okay. And so, with clairaudience, though, it's a little more in tune. So you may hear a whole conversation. Mm-hmm. You may hear, like, for instance, when I connect in with clients, when I'm working with people doing sessions with them, I speak telepathically to their soul, to their higher aspect of themselves, what some people will call their higher selves. Mm-hmm. And it speaks to me telepathically. It will give me, just as like we're talking like this, but I don't hear it audibly. I hear it in my head, and it will say things, right? So some people can communicate with individuals that way, and they'll hear some messages that way. Some people will communicate with spirits or angels or loved ones on the other side.
Which is which? How do you know if it's an angel or someone else's higher self? Like, how do you know the difference?
So you have to, this is where one of the big things that I will talk about, because I don't teach a lot of psychic and intuitive development, and here's the reason why. My journey into connecting in with this, like the higher self, were through a deep journey in trusting myself, like radical trust.
Yeah.
And so I did some things that radically trusting myself that, may scare the hell out of some other people. So I don't necessarily teach it because, you have to have your own journey with trusting yourself.
Yeah,
but
I understand that.
the answer to that is a deep trust that, one, the divine is not leading you astray, so that you can trust what you're getting. And that also the voice of the divine, whether that's the voice of your soul speaking to you, or the voice of a loved one speaking to you, or a spirit guide speaking to you, or anything like that, the voice of, when they speak, they don't speak through fear. So a lot of times our own internal voice is the chatter of, like, fear, is the fear-based stuff.
Yeah.
And the divine voice does not feel like fear, and it usually is not loud. It's not very loud. It's usually a very soft voice. Now, it can be strong, but it's usually not very loud. It doesn't really shout. So it's kind of a softer voice. And the way and a lot of times it does sound like your own internal head voice, right? But you have to when you do the process of trusting yourself more, you can kind of differentiate between the slight difference between, oh, that's actually my grandmother who passed, right? Because it will sound and feel like her a little bit, but not as if it's her complete voice, as if she's speaking out, because I don't hear it externally. I hear it telepathically.
It's like a feeling, yeah.
So it's oh, this feels like her, right? And that matches something she would say. That's her personality. That's my grandmother's personality when she's saying that. So that's how. And when the beloveds will speak to me, because even if I'm not in the traditional channeling aspects where I'm in a light trance and they're speaking through me, they also speak to me throughout my day, just to me. And their voice is very, it's a slightly different, I've learned to differentiate it, just again, because I've played with it, I've trusted it more, I've done, just the trial and error with it, and I can tell what their voice is. But their voice sounds a little bit more, when they speak, they have a very clearer, more steady train of thought than my regular voice is. Like, my regular thoughts can be a little choppy. I have to think about stuff a little bit. Theirs is more of a clearer train of thought. Even though it doesn't sound like I tell people all the time, like, the voice of the divine isn't like this booming, like, the sunshine coming from the clouds. It's like, I think that's what a lot of us, expect, is like this, or this booming voice of God. I am God, Jerome. Listen to me. It doesn't really sound like that. It sounds a little bit like the voice in your head, but it will feel a little different. Like, energetically, it just feels a little different. And the train of thought is a little different, if you can pay attention to that. Like, your usual voice in your head may be more erratic. It may be a little more sporadic. And usually the divine voice is a very clear kind of train of thought for a second. Yeah. And again, it doesn't speak through fear. Yeah. So even if it is trying to guide you, and this is another thing to really dive into, because the soul's voice specifically never is trying to guide you away from something. It's usually guiding towards something, even when it's protecting you. So it doesn't say run away from that, or like, don't do that. It'll do more like, wouldn't you really want to do this over here, or, come over here. You really want to you really wanted to come over here and have some of this ice cream over here, right? And then you walk over to the ice cream stand, and then the piano drops from the second floor over where you used to be standing, right? But it doesn't say, run, because the piano's getting ready to drop. It doesn't talk like that. It says, ooh, you'd really like some ice cream over here right now. Like, right now, let's get some ice cream. And you go over and get some ice cream, and you find out. So it always leads you towards something,
so it's a desire
instead of,
out of the blue that
something.
you're saying. There's a desire that comes out of the blue, like all of a sudden I want ice cream so bad I have to have it right now.
Yeah. Or you feel this, it's a desire, or it's a strong pull towards something. Okay. It's either a really strong desire or it's a really strong pull towards something. So again, the pull, even when it's like, I'm ready to be if it's asking you to come out of a relationship, right? It doesn't say get out of this. You need to get away from this man and get out of this relationship. It is say something more like, I think we're ready to really be by ourselves. I think we're really ready to be by ourselves, and I think we really don't you really want to just like see what it is? I think we really just want to get out on our own and explore a life on our own. And yeah, it's going to be a little scary, but I think this is what we really want to do. It's not like you just leave that man. Like, I hear a lot of people who say, like, I'm waiting for my soul to say, leave that man alone. And it's not going to say that. It's going to say, like, we want to do something that feels better than this.
And
right?
Funny you mentioned that, because I went through a breakup, and the voice, I think, was trying to communicating to me, but everything else was so loud that I kept like ignoring it. I knew that I needed to walk away. But one thing I do notice, it kept leading me into negative vibrations. Like, things just gradually kept getting so worse that I just had to be like, look, don't contact me again. Leave me alone. It's just like, the spirit like guided me out of that situation so harshly. But I know that I was trying to stay and trying to wait, and maybe he's a twin flame. So my spirit had to take it into some harsher matters to force me out of it.
Yeah, that's part of the agreement we had with our communication with being, with being human, and the divine part of ourselves was like the part that we made, the agreement we made when we chose to incarnate here, is that when I'm not paying attention, when I don't pay attention to the internal voice, help me, because I'm going to lead myself into dramatic harm if I don't pay attention to that voice. Yeah. So help me. And the way that we get helped is things become dramatically more uncomfortable.
Yeah, it got so uncomfortable to the point where I remember one day I lost everything I lost my computer for work. I couldn't get online. And then I worked for the guy. And so when I walked to the bathroom, I was like, what's going on? I knew it was something spiritual. Then I heard a voice say, your time is up. I was like, you got to go.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, are you ready? Are you finally ready to pay attention now? Like, we've made it very uncomfortable
to be in this situation.
Are you ready to listen? Are you ready to listen to yourself? Because we usually, and not usually, I'll say always, because there's not a time I've ever met that it's not been the case. But there's usually, again, the internal signal is small in the beginning. Yeah. It's like, I want to do something other than this. Right? This is no longer it. I want to do something other than this. Yeah. And we have a choice. We always have a choice. That's what free will is about. Do you want to listen to that or not? And if we don't, then it'll just be a little bit more, it'll be a little bit louder. Okay, we want to do something else. This is not it. And if you don't get that, then again, it's not a punishment. It's trying to lead you to the highest expansion of ourselves, the greatest freedom and the greatest joy. And we know that what we're doing is not it, right? That's not it. And that's not going to lead us anywhere healthy. Yeah. So the only way we'll actually hear is through pain then. And so pain has to come, because we will pay attention to pain, because pain we can't ignore pain. Now, some people will still try to suppress it. That's where addictions come in. Yeah. That's where substance use comes in. Yeah. That's where control and things like that come in, but you still know pain is there. You still know it's there.
Yeah,
You're just trying to suppress it. You weren't
totally
taught, but it's trying to stay.
and you know what? And
Yeah.
that makes a lot of sense because I noticed that I smoked cannabis and I felt like I had to like around him. I felt like I needed to have it, and I can see how that can turn into an addiction. Is because like especially as an empath, I figure out a way like when I'm dating someone, I feel like I need to like I can be fine. I can go without smoking cannabis. But then when I'm dating someone, I feel like I need to. Like I don't know if it's like a whole energy thing, but I feel like I need to clear my energy and just get that out of my mind. But I have one more question. And so it's funny that you mentioned the trusting yourself because that's like the hardest problem for me. And I'm sure it's the religious belief systems that was instilled with me. But when it came to mediumship, it's something that I kind of recently realized that I was awakening to, and I tried to deny it because my church was like, oh, communicating with the dead, necromancy, you won't be saved. And so I remember my ex-boyfriend, his brother spoke to me who had passed away, committed suicide at the age of 23. And so I remember I heard a voice and it said, tell my brother I love him. And I immediately just thought I was imagining this and I wasn't going to say anything. And then the next day I started to write the text message and I started to say, your brother said your brother said he loves you, right? I didn't send it. And as soon as I started typing it, I felt like these thoughts started zapping into my head, like, tell him I'm proud of him. And I was thinking, oh my God, am I imagining this? And like, I have the hardest time trusting myself and trusting what's going on in the spiritual realm. Sometimes I feel like I'm my worst enemy when it comes to blocking my abilities. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so when I first, so I did not, when mediumship opened for me, I was not really asking to be a medium. That was not of interest to me. I didn't want that particular gift. What I had been praying for a long time was I wanted, the psychic gifts, and I wanted to channel because I'd been introduced to Abraham Hicks when I was a teenager, and it awoke something in me, a deep knowing that this was actually supposed to be an aspect of my life. Like I was going to be doing work like that. And so that was like, I was like, okay, I wanted to open to that. And I remember the very first time I sat down to do an intuitive session with somebody when I first started in my mid-20s. And I heard their loved ones start talking to me. I just kind of very similar, like you were saying. Their loved ones start talking to me, and I was like, "Wait a minute, what's going on? Like that's not what I do. That's not what's happening, right?" And I was like, "What's going on?" And I also wouldn't, but the thing again with radical trust was I made the commitment, and this is again what I tell people is it's really about how deeply you're going to trust yourself and trust that life loves you, your soul loves you, the divine is not leading you astray, and your willingness to try it so you can figure out, even if that means falling on your face in the beginning. So what happened for me was I was like, okay, I'm going to say this. And this is literally how I did it. I was like, I'm going to say these things that are coming, that I'm hearing, and if they turn out to be bullshit, then I'm never going to do this again. Right? If this person flips out, and they say, what the hell are you talking about? That's nothing, or my mother is still alive. What are you talking about? Then I'm just never going to do this again. But I'm going to be, right now, I'm going to lay down, I'm going to fully trust that this is what I'm hearing, and this is soul, or this is spirit. And I'm going to lay over, I'm going to give myself as a vessel to you, and I'm just going to trust. And if this is bullshit, though, this is over. So I really just literally went willing to fall flat on my face and make a fool of myself. And I would just say what came in. So I was like, okay, I'm going to say this. This may not make sense or whatever. And please tell me if it doesn't, but this is what I'm hearing. And I would say it exactly, and I would not filter it. Because in the very beginning, I would try, if it was very outlandish, I would try to filter it until I started to realize that was true, because the person would come back and they would say something like, my mother used to say something, she used to say this, and it would be the very thing that I would be hearing in my head that I didn't say, that their mother used to say. And I was like, oh my God, I heard that. That's exactly what I was saying. It's like, yeah, my mother used to say that all the time. And so that made me begin to say, okay, so this is real, and I need to stop suppressing myself and stop guessing myself. But again, the part that really did it was when I just was willing to make a fool of myself, and I just, whatever came through, I said it, whatever I was hearing. Mm-hmm. And some of those things were really outlandish, and they were really, because for example, a lot of times, and this happened a lot in the beginning, a lot of times their loved ones were cursed. And I was raised, I was taught in my spiritual journey, like love and light, and holy and holiness, sacredness, and no cursing and all of that. But their loved ones would be cursing, right? And they wouldn't be like negatively cursing, but they may say something like a curse word in there, and at first I would be like, oh, I can't say that. I can't say that. And then I would just trust. I would say, okay, if we're going to say this and we're going to trust this, and if we fall flat on our face, okay. And I would say it exactly how I heard it. And they would always say, yep, that's her. That was her favorite little phrase that she would say. Or that was his favorite thing. Or that's the last thing he said to me, right? And so I would say, oh, wow. I've got to trust in, and that's the thing about it. It's a muscle, right? Mm-hmm. So the more you do it and the more you're willing to fall on your face, the more you'll get confirmation. Or you may hear one voice, and you may hear two voices at a time, right? Mm-hmm. And so one is like you projecting your crap in there, and then one is actually the voice of the divine. And you may go with this one thinking this is the real one. Uh-huh. And then you'll say it out, and it won't be, and then you'll know, oh, wait, this voice is different. This is the voice. So you have to do a trial and error.
Yeah, that's what I'm worried about.
You have to be willing to make mistakes.
Okay.
You have to be willing to make mistakes, right? So if you do
make a mistake, that's just a part of the development. Like listening to something and it leads you the wrong direction, and it's just a part of development and trusting yourself. You have to be willing to try things out. It's just like if we told babies that, that you just had to go from crawling to automatically walking, and if babies were absolutely afraid that if they couldn't just get up from crawling, what they do is they fall trying to walk, and through that process, their legs get stronger. That they walk. That's actually what strengthens babies' legs. And that's how you
That's
learn.
Literally what strengthens. Yeah, that's how you learn, and that's actually what strengthens babies' legs is the falling and the getting back up. The falling that's actually what strengthens their legs muscles. It's actually part of the whole mechanism that strengthens babies' leg muscles. So they need that part. Their growth development. So you need to do trial and error. You will make some mistakes. It's part of it. There may be something that, I was listening to this more because I was afraid that this wasn't real, and I went with this instead, and that wasn't really what's real. Mm-hmm. And through that process, you'll begin to see, I actually do need to trust this other part more. I can trust that. Mm-hmm. And also, when you say it and it's right, that helps you trust it. But also, when you say things that are wrong and you were listening to a different voice, that helps you differentiate between the voices. You need both of those experiences.
Okay. All right. That sounds great. Yep. All the stuff that I definitely learned a lot, and it makes a lot of sense. Yep. So I appreciate you taking your time today to chat with me and teach me some things that I can share with my channel. I really hope that you come back again, for sure. So
anytime. I fully had fun. I had fun.
Okay, and so everybody, JeromeBraggs.com is his website. I'll have him linked below. Check him out. Subscribe to his YouTube channel, and we can support each other. All right, thank you. Namaste.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Simone. Namaste.